in a supporter shield race. They started Romero in goal because Patrick Schulte and Nico Hagen were both in their national teams on national duty. Evan Bush was hurt, so it was just Romero on the roster. The problem was that on the bench they didn't have a single backup goalkeeper because the crew had used all their short-term loan call-ups for both backup goalkeepers from crew 2 up to this point. So you're allowed 4 per player, and they used them all up to this point. Now, usually, whatever, right? You move on and you're safe. But Romero was given a red card for a dangerous challenge outside the box, and they had nobody to bring on. So Sean Zawadzki had to play in goal. He conceded 4 goals to Seattle, including a hat trick to Albert Rusnak, which MLS Twitter continues to post as if it's impressive, which I just can't deal with because it's literally him just shooting on just you might as well be shooting into an
Just
empty
shoot
net,
it on
man.
target.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there and they subbed him in and they had the free. It was a free kick after the red card, and I'm like, just put it on frame, Albert. You'll be okay. And he put it on frame and he scored. The crew, of course, lost this game, but they also likely lost any chance in the supporter shield unless Miami have a massive slip up, which does not seem to be the case right now. Wilfred Nancy was heated. His post game presser spent 8 minutes. I found a great video by Massive Report. Thank you guys for getting that out there. Heated post game presser. He said that the call ups, and I can confirm, counted against him were used on the CONCACAF Champions Cup because they mandated 3 goalkeepers, and for a friendly against Aston Villa where they didn't even play. He was screaming for the league to increase call ups due to more games being played and has a lot of really good points in there. So let's get into it. And the first thing I want to ask you, Connor, in 10 to 12,000 words, can you tell me why MLS is rigging this system for Inter Miami?
Wow. What are you, my English teacher? What is this? I gotta
Well,
write an
I've been
essay about
talking.
it.
I've been talking a lot, so I want you to talk a lot. That's all. I want to get you involved. I know you love it.
Kind of when I was thinking about this ahead of time, I'm of two different mindsets, and I'll save the other one for later. And they're not conflicting mindsets. They're of the same thing. But one of them is a lot of frustration towards the league because this is just something that shouldn't be happening. Like it's just so easily avoidable. And now instead we have to see this absolute like clown show activity go on. It's different like when it's a one-off thing in the last 5-10 minutes of the game because the backup keeper that like had to come in earlier from the game because the starter got hurt or something gets sent off, and now you have a field player out there and whatever, that's something. But like for Columbus to be put in this position to begin with is so stupid. The fact that one, you have to be playing games during international breaks is just awful. And I know that's a huge point of contention for a lot of both fans and critics of MLS. And I kind of think it's valid because you have situations like this, which is really stupid. And then two, like you had said about like the hardship waiver, having to call like being forced to call it up for Champions Cup, which is a different tournament, and I don't know why that should count towards MLS rules. And then a friendly against Aston Villa, which again really shouldn't, I feel like, be considered when taking into account MLS regular season play. So this felt extremely dumb. I think Nancy has some gripes there. I mean, it's not guaranteed that even if they had won this game, that they would be like hunting down Miami in the supporter shield because I think even if they won and they won the extra game in hand, they're still like 4 points behind. But I do get it because now, like you had said, it is a long road ahead to try to catch Miami in the supporter shield race. Whereas if they had won the game and then won the extra game in hand, they still had a shot. Like it was, I think, a 4 point gap. So there's still a chance. So do I think they're rigging it in favor of Miami? I don't. But do I think that the rules they have in place are really stupid? And the structure they have in place is stupid? Yes, I do.
Way to hit literally every single point without me asking you about it. That was really good.
That's
Keeping
my
very
specialty.
on
We
brand.
talk we talk about that every episode. There is
Very
stuff that I still have thoughts on that we haven't talked about yet. So we can't have hit every point yet.
very on brand for the Connor Wright. Because you were supposed to set up a really funny joke. Like, yes, obviously this is Daddy Don rigging the system so that Miami have an easy path to not only the Supporter Shield, but the Club World Cup when he comes out on Monday and says that extra random Club World Cup spot that goes to one of the host teams is going to be the Supporter Shield winner. Because now he knows that Miami aren't going to mess it up. And if they do get close to
Mhm.
messing it up, he is going to make sure that they don't. Like how on this game, not only did he deny them the hardship waiver, but he was in the VAR booth with the VAR telling them, if you so much as even think about giving them anything less than a red card, I will make sure you never work in this league again, right? Because that's how this obviously happened. But you don't like fun or happiness, so you don't go with jokes like that.
No, I don't like fun and happiness because the comments never like fun and happiness. And if you say anything, even in a joking matter, they will take it as Bible and they will crucify you. So I'm
Oh,
not even gonna joke about it.
so you were joking about Aiden Morris to Burrow being a bad move. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I mean, no. That one came straight from the heart.
Oh man, we're
And
gonna be here for
I'll double
nine
down on that. I'll triple
hours.
down on that.
Obviously, this isn't a something where they're trying to make it happen, although it does feel that way. But I agree with you that this is absolutely absurd. And the problem is not so much the league itself, but it's in the CBA. That's why this happened, and a lot of people aren't really understanding that. And not that sounds really like, oh, everybody's stupid, but it's a tough thing to figure out where it came from because it's, with all of the MLS rules in place already, it just feels like it's just another random thing on top of that. But I have the citation for anyone who wants to look it up. It's section 18-8 subsection 3.
Oh my God, you're such
Yeah.
a loser.
Any player that signs short term, you can sign 4 4-day contracts, no more than 16 days. You can't be on a roster for more than 4 games. You can only be on a roster for 2 MLS days, but those games cover MLS, U.S. Open Cup exhibitions, which is the Aston Villa garbage, Liga MX tournaments, Leagues Cup, Campeones Cup, whatever, and CCL. This was signed off by the Players Association, which is an absolute nightmare. And it also doesn't make sense because, as I've just learned very recently, the mighty New York Red Bulls, who are more massive than any club in this league, have called up Omar Valencia, a left back from Red Bull 2, 7 times without giving him a first team contract because we got an Olympic hardship waiver when John Tolkien was gone, as if Patrick Schulte wasn't at the Olympics when they had to do this for their goalkeeper in the Aston Villa friendly. Like they just are not holding everybody to the same standards, or their rules aren't flexible enough to deal with something like this. And this is where Nancy was really good, where he comes in, he's like, the league wants us to play in all these tournaments, Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, Open Cup, this cup, that cup, but we're still being limited to 4 contracts for each player. Like there's just too many games with not enough short-term loans to fill out the bench for emergency situations. Most of them don't even play. But when he asked for it, they say no, deal with it. Right? His other really good point is they shouldn't have to sign a player who isn't ready for the first team to a full contract, take up a roster spot, sit in the locker room, sit on the bench just for 1 game to cover a freak situation like this. There should be more flexibility in that. So likewise, to me, and I think that you were mentioning this as well, the MLS CBA needs to be like this needs to be a big highlight for them where you cannot use these short-term loans for anything other than MLS. Like Champions Cup has their own set of roster rules that need to be followed. Friendlies are friendlies. Who gives a damn who's playing on a like nobody cares.
Yeah.
If they aren't MLS competitions, the call-ups should not matter for MLS roster rules. You know what I mean? Like there should be a split between, okay, these are the rules that go for MLS games. Outside of that, you do whatever you want, right? Within reason, of course. Don't go and just, whatever, but you put a spin on this, and it's the same reason that we're in the US Open Cup nonsense, because you have all of these random things that have to all tie in together, saying you're only allowed to call 4 people up. So if you make a US Open Cup run and you don't want to use your first team and you go 4 games in, all your short-term loans are gone, right? It's I agree with Nancy 100%. Like I'm not asking to get rid of it completely because there's a limit there and it's there for a reason, right? Prevent teams from building these huge second teams, being Chelsea 2.0 with a lone army and then just randomly calling up from a pool of 50 players instead of 25. Like everybody plays with the same set, right? You're not expanding it super long. You're not hoarding players just to pull from. I get it. But this situation shows why it's stupid, right? If you're going to play in all these competitions and count all these and count all of these call-ups during the competitions against teams that play in them, then you need to either one, expand the number of allowable call-ups, or hold it to MLS games only. Because it feels like you're now punishing good teams with international players for doing well in tournaments. Like, oh, sucks to suck. You gotta give up something. And I get like there's a parity aspect of it, but this isn't what parity is supposed to be for.
Or just like, I don't know, don't play during international windows. Like I understand that's a lot easier said than done. You'd have to shift around the entire schedule of the season, but like, yeah, I mean, if you're not playing in international windows, you don't have this issue where all of a sudden your goalkeeper and a number of other players are missing because they're on international break. And now instead you're watching like you're asking fans to go watch like you're asking fans to go watch Zawatsky in goal because of situations like this. It's incredibly stupid. This is just and I understand that it's a CBA thing, so it's not I guess it's not like necessarily like fully on the league because technically the Players Association agreed to it. But when you mentioned the Red Bull stuff too, that definitely is like now all of a sudden you got me thinking maybe I am on the Inter Miami conspiracy theory
Payroll.
bandwagon. Yeah, no, not on the payroll, but maybe I'm on the conspiracy theory wagon now.
The
Maybe
pro
they are trying to rig it for them.
and the biggest problem with this is the CBA runs through 2028. So you're
I
not going to
know.
see change in this for a while, which sucks. And again, I'm kind of scrolling through Twitter here and everybody's talking about, oh, we need to change this right now, right now, right now. You're not bringing anybody back to the table to talk CBA yet. You might get it after 2026. That's my guess. Is you're going to go through 2026 World Cup and then it's be like, okay, we want to make these changes. Now that the iron's hot and everybody's around, which sucks. But to build on your point from international breaks, right? It's a different league from early 2000s, even early 2010s, where the number of international players leaving midseason is massive, right? I think they counted over 70 players that left for various countries in Europe, South America, North America. And it impacts not just the starting 11, but as we've seen in the crew, the depth pieces are moving too. Backup goalkeeper, full Guatemalan international. Jason Russell Rowe is a backup striker, straight into the straight into the Canadian team, right? Esmir Bajrak Terovic in the Bosnian team. David Martinez for Venezuela. I mean, we're not just calling in the top 5 players in the league and saying, okay, everybody else can just play on as normal, right? We're getting to a point quality wise where our depth pieces and our rotation pieces are getting legitimate minutes in cup competitions, right? Now, again, they've done better with that. Only 12 of the 29 teams played this weekend, so they were able to rotate things out. But again, this is a game for Columbus that was meant to be played in March, right? They had to move it because of CONCACAF Champions Cup. So they didn't have the opportunity not to play during this international window because they were successful in an international competition. So why are they being punished for being a good squad that can compete at the high levels of their league and these international cups, all of it, right? Do we need to stop playing during the international break? Maybe. I'm not quite sure we can. And that's a different episode, and it might be a what if that we talked about. I think we kind of covered it a little bit, but it would include a ton of midweek games, very little time on the training ground or to rest or recover and fine tune tactics. And my guess is a lot of upset players because you're traveling all. I mean, again, this isn't England where you're going up and down the coast in a day, right? If you're traveling even out of state, you're taking 2-3 days of travel. It's a lot tougher to do than people can think about. We can game plan that one day and have a thought of it, but if you are going to ask teams to be successful in international tournaments, and I get you want to do the parity part of it, you need to reconsider this rule. And again, this isn't going to be a break the back. Everybody's going to run out of money and we're going to fold decision, right? You're asking them to say, hey, if we run into a problem where we have injuries and international call ups and whatever, can I bring up this 18-year-old in case the worst case scenario happens? You know, again, if he gets sent off, is an 18-year-old goalkeeper going to make the difference? I have no idea. But it's going to be better and make a better game than let's put a center back in goal, right? Increase the number of call ups, stop enforcing them on non MLS games, allow these teams to make these big runs, build these teams with international caliber players, be a big part of the league. Do us proud, right? We want these teams to go out and do well, but don't do it and then say, "Oh yeah, sorry, it sucks that your league game now. You gotta make sacrifices. Sorry, like it just sucks."
Yeah, I fully agree. This is a really disappointing situation. The one other thing I was going to say on this topic was specifically about Romero in goal because you go into the game and you know you're the only goalkeeper on the roster. Why would you even put yourself in that situation? Like, what was he thinking doing that? Like, whether or not you agree with the red card decision, why would you even put yourself in that situation? Like, he really did not need to come all the way out of the box to challenge that. when you're the only goalkeeper on the roster. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. You know, it is tough to turn that off, right? In your head, it's tough to switch off and be like, okay, I'm going to play more conservative, right? Some people are just built that way, and you could argue whether it was red. I don't disagree with red there, but I agree in a sense. But again, I coached back at Alfred and played back at Alfred. I remember, you go in and you got a guy who's on a yellow. Hey, don't be dumb here. Don't make us take you out. Stay in there, and gets a foul, yellow card, turns around, and instead of running back and as we're saying, hey, go back and getting his sub ready, he turns around and screams at the referee, "What the F are you doing?" Second yellow, boom, you're gone. Right. And that's just who he was. He was a hot-headed, not hot-headed. He was emotional. He played with a lot of emotion. It's like that's just, some of the way that people do things. So it's tough to
But you
switch
you
out of
just
that.
can't. I get it, but you just can't do that because
Correct. I'm not, oh yeah, no,
I
you
mean
can't.
he single-handedly lost them that game, like 100%. Him getting sent off in that situation when you know going into the game you're the only goalkeeper in the 18 today, you cannot do anything risky. Even if that's your personality, you cannot do that. You can't. And I'm not blaming Columbus because obviously he was their only option. It's not like, oh, like we only have one goalkeeper and it's like, oh, and we put the guy that's like rash in there, like, but they didn't have a choice. But like I think I understand that it's hard to kind of switch those things off, but you have to be smarter about that. You have to be more situationally aware. I just think that's poor.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think it's tough, but it happened, right? And as much as you want to say, oh, you shouldn't do it, crazy things happen, right? What happens if he goes down and gets hurt, right? Forget the red card. What happens if he gets hurt, right? Now they're in the
That's
same
a different
position,
situation though.
right? But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
still
it's the
comes
same
back to the same
situation,
problem.
but it's not like I wouldn't be blaming him in that case. Like I'm not saying like of course my thoughts on the problem completely stay the same, whether he's hurt or if he's sent off. But like the like frustration towards him is different whether he got sent off or he got injured. That would change this situation on like him being in the spotlight specifically.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you again jumped about 7 spaces high and took on to our last point.
Listen, I'm trying to move things along. We
And you
got things to talk about.
Yeah, and you're trying to move things along, but you're trying to jump ahead of the script here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Shield race. But again, my thoughts are very similar to yours, where even if they had won those two, they're 4 points off Miami. They still have to play Miami in a stretch of games to get into the season. If they beat them, they're within one. Miami slips up. It's a race, but it is a lot of what ifs, right? It would have been really difficult. Columbus had basically double game weeks every week to the end of the year to catch up in games that they missed through Champions Cup and Leagues Cup, and then they have to participate in Campiones Cup. They have to do all this stuff. They've got the most packed schedule in the league. But it does feel like we were deprived a little bit of an exciting finish, right? Miami slips up in a game and drops 2 points, and Columbus picks up. Okay, now we gotta race to the finish line. Right now they're 7 points clear of the Galaxy, and the Galaxy have a game in hand. 8 points, or rather, Miami has a game in hand of the Galaxy. 8 points clear of FCC even, and then 10 points clear of Columbus, and Columbus has a game in hand. So, you know, I don't think anybody was going to catch Miami unless they just capitulate. But I think the whole league was hoping that Columbus would be the one to save us from it. And it seems like it seems a tough way for that not to be a storyline by the end of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I do know what you mean. I mean, like you said, it was going to be a lot of what ifs to catch them, but I mean, I think Miami's been very good. Like, I don't want to discredit Miami. I know a lot of people will obviously point the fingers and be like, ah, they rigged it for Messi. Like, they did everything they could to help Messi, but like, Messi hasn't been playing for
Hmm.
majority of the year, and they've constantly been like your bold prediction. I think is probably going to be true in the fact that these guys were just not on the field very often together, and yet they've still made it work, and they've still won 18 games, and they've still been very competitive while rotating people in and out and throwing a bunch of people who we had no idea who they were at the start of the season. And they've constantly been stepping up and getting results. And I think Tata Martino has done a really good job. And I think they absolutely have deserved to be in the position that they are. Do I think MLS has certainly had some moments where it's not helped the conspiracy theories? Yeah, sure. I mean, we're talking about one right now, but I I don't think it's in a situation where it's like, everything was just put in Miami's direction. Like they were forced into the supporter shield position. Like I think they've deserved to be in this position, but I think it would have been obviously more exciting had Columbus been a little bit closer towards the end of the season for an end of season shield race, but it's looking not super likely that that's going to happen at this point, unless like Miami can afford like a slip up or two at this point and still see things out for the shield.
Yeah, which is a shame, right? And the only thing that you can do is keep going, and that's and this is why we've always been cup truthers, right? Because Miami clearly not deserving, and they're just being a kid, people,
Exactly.
kid,
You said
it's a
it. You
kid,
said it. Clip
it's a
it.
kid. um, yeah, that's why I'm in charge of the clips. Yeah, listen, I don't know, I think it impacts the Shield race because there was a really exciting storyline of the big flashy team versus the single best team in MLS history, and I'm not afraid to say that about Columbus, by the way, and we can have that conversation another time. But I don't think that it's absurd that we don't see these two teams take on each other in the conference finals. Well, actually we can't because Red Bull's getting there next year's opening day. Next year's opening day. No, like these guys are gonna come back. You're gonna have your big clash. You should have your big clash, and then it'll be really fun to watch that play out.
Hopefully everybody's
Well,
healthy for that because I want to see all
yeah,
the stars
please.
in that one. That would be fun.
God, can you imagine that sort of game? Messi, Alba, Busquets, Suarez versus Cucho, Rossi, Nagby, and Ramirez. I think Ramirez, the other guy. That'd just be a super, super fun roll in.
For sure.
Love it. Love it. Well,